Okay, good evening again, everybody. My name is Chris Wells. I'm with the Fairfax County Department of Transportation. We welcome you here tonight to the Braddock District 2021 Paving and Restriping meeting. We have a joint presentation tonight between myself and Steve Welch of the Virginia Department of Transportation. Before we get started, though, Supervisor Walkinshaw is with us. And Supervisor Walkinshaw, if you'd like to just make some opening remarks.
Well, thank you. I just want to thank both VDOT and FCDOT for giving up your evening to give us this presentation tonight and for our partnership, and look forward to seeing the presentation and the questions from folks that we have on. Thank you.
Sorry, thank you. All right, I have a script to read, but I didn't have that up with the splash screen I had up. I can't see two things at the same time, so hopefully you can still hear me. This is a virtual meeting, of course, and we do want to go over some guidance for the meeting. Again, we welcome you. The guidelines are that this meeting is being recorded and will be uploaded to YouTube when we're done. We'll link and share from the webpage this link, and also have it available via social media such as Twitter and Facebook. You're welcome to submit questions using the Q&A function in the WebEx window at any time. We will do our best to get all questions answered. We will be answering those questions at the end of our joint presentation. If we run out of time, our team will follow up with any unanswered questions with replies directly to you or by posting on the web page. Please do not use the chat feature to submit your questions, as the Q&A function will send your question to all the administrators in the session, and will keep the questions organized in one place. If you're on the phone, please hold your questions to the end. We will have instructions on how to ask questions from your phone at the conclusion of the presentation. We also encourage you to submit your comments to today's meeting with the contact material we'll have at the end of the presentation, which you can do either by phone call, mail, or electronically. So with that, let me put up the splash screen again. And give just a little bit of background. So again, I'm Chris Wells. I'm in the Fairfax County's Department of Transportation, the Active Transportation Program Manager. Steve Welch is here with us from VDOT, and he'll begin his presentation in a second, but just a brief little background. This is a collaboration that the county and VDOT have had for over 10 years at this point. We've really improved upon this collaboration in recent years, recognizing the different needs of the community. The basic premise is the roads are paved every summer. VDOT owns and maintains the roads in Fairfax County. And when those roads are paved, it's like a blank canvas. So we have an opportunity to change the striping to improve things in the community. Originally, 10 years ago, this was really only focused on introducing bike lanes for the sake of creating a bicycle network, which is important to the county. But as we've evolved our relationship, we realized that there's a lot more community concerns revolving around speeding and cut-through traffic. And so we know that by narrowing the striping on the roadway, that it actually helps with excessive speeding. We can better define parking areas and additionally deal with pedestrian safety issues like crosswalks. So that's the basic premise. With that, I'll go ahead and let Steve go over the paving portion, which is VDOT, and then I'll come back later on to do the striping portion, which is Fairfax County's. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. And one moment, everyone, just calling up my computer here. 1 second. Sorry. Oh, boy. Let's see. Can you see my screen yet?
Not yet.
Not
I
yet?
cannot.
Okay. Give me 1 moment. There we go. Should do it now.
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. If everybody can see the screen well, then I'm going to go ahead and proceed with the presentation. Let's see here. View-wise, I think we're good. Okay. All right. Thank you again. My name is Steve Welch with the Virginia Department of Transportation, the Assistant District Transportation and Land Use Manager for VDOT in the Northern Virginia District. I'm here tonight to talk about the VDOT paving program and how it works, and give you a little bit of background on that, and the opportunity at the very end after Chris's presentation, as mentioned, to ask any questions, and I'll be glad to try to answer them. So the agenda for this evening, I'm going to go through what our program is all about in big picture, our paving budget, how our planning and construction for paving functions, how are our roads selected for paving? That's always a question that is asked. How are pavement condition ratings determined? And types of pavement treatments, as well as the pavement dashboard, and marking and striping, and other helpful information. So bear with me. I'm just going to go ahead and get going. So in the Northern Virginia District, we maintain over 14,000 lane miles. Over 7,000 of those, or over half, are in Fairfax County. In Loudoun, we have over 3,000, as well as Prince William, and then in Arlington. But in Arlington, we only maintain the interstate and some of the primaries. So it kind of gives you a perspective of the number of lane miles that we deal with. In the past years, our budget has, in the lower right corner, over the past several years, has been a little over $1 billion. And each year, looking back, you can see this year right now in the lower right corner for fiscal year 2021, we're at approximately $108 million. But at any rate, if you look back over the last 2 or 3 years, it's been about the same thing, and it was a little higher. But years ago, back in the late 2000s, early 2013s, it was very low. So we're doing a little bit of catch up. So each year we start our planning about this time, gathering our data for the next year, because this year's already worked out. And so we're getting ready to get going here with a break in the weather in the springtime. Summer, fall, we begin data gathering and preparing schedules again for the next year. Then in winter, we're closing out the contracts for this year, and then we're getting advertising for bids, getting in those bids, receiving them, and then we're executing the contracts. And we actually do that between January and April, and even sometimes as late as May. And that's because we release a whole bunch up front, and then we start releasing some out each month to kind of go through the season things may change sometimes. Our typical construction season is April through October with the weather, because pavement requires that. So how do we select the roads for paving? We do that based on pavement condition, traffic volumes, our entire neighborhoods we look at versus just the main street sometimes. We try to avoid locations where we know, of course, there are existing VDOT projects or county projects, or one of the utility companies might be doing a gas line project or something like that that's going to cut into and work with a pavement to begin with. So we want to avoid that. Also look at economies of scale and regarding mobilization costs in particular. So when a contract arrives at the scene, they have a tractor trailer with a carrier on the back and their equipment. They have to offload the equipment and stored on the site while they're working. A lot of times they'll mill and then move to the next street or the next neighborhood, that is. And sometimes we have 2, 3, 4 adjoining neighborhoods. Then we'll try to get those that are close to each other if the programming works out that way. So how are roads selected for paving with respect to data collection? We have contracts annually with a company that does that, and this is called an automatic road analyzer, ARON, and it has equipment on with cameras and sensors and other types of computer equipment. It measures pavement distress, roughness, texture, rutting, and the rest of the items you can see there, gathering that data for figuring out which roads we're going to pursue. And one thing I'll mention, because we get asked this, is every year the conditions change. We just don't know. With a freeze thaw and the expansion and contraction you get, roads change, so the ratings change. So then we develop a rating for the pavement, the condition. That's 100 being the highest and 0, of course, being the lowest. But we have to maintain a 60 rating index. So wherever we see the very poor and the poor, those are when we go after the very poor first as far as trying to get pavement done. Then might be able to, we have the funds available, which are all state maintenance funds. Then we go ahead and try to do some of the poor roads as well. But it's, again, we have to do that annually, which leads to this slide. Every year in the past, we've done the interstate roadways. We do this data collection annually, as well as on all the primaries. But if you saw earlier on the screen, over half the roads are secondary. So in the past, we've only been able to do 20% every year. So it takes 5 years to get 100% of the information, if you will, to know how good or bad each road is. But starting this year, for the first time, we're going to be collecting the data on every secondary road every year, as we do with the interstates and primaries. So how are they selected with respect to traffic volumes? We have to maintain 82% of the network has to have a 60 or higher for the high volume interstate, primary, and secondary routes. High volume, of course, for interstate, and many of the primaries are high volume anyway. And then the higher AADT, or average annual daily traffic, of 3,500 or greater is what that means. And then we have to maintain a 75%, slightly lower, for the low volume primaries, and then a 60% of the low volume secondary routes. So that's, you can see it's quite complex anyway. And over the last several years, we've been playing a little bit we've done well with respect to the 82% or 80% with interstate primaries. And we've been playing catch up on the secondaries. And this past year, we've made quite a significant progress, and almost up to the 60% sufficiency rating. And again, this is, you have to remember at the same time, we're also, it's a cycle. Pavement gets old, we're replacing it. So it's just happening in circles with respect to playing catch up, but it's also has a bit to do with the budget available, the maintenance funds that are available each year. The types of pavement treatment that we do is a preventive maintenance is a sealant, and it's a sealant that's combined with a small granular stone. So we call that a slurry seal. They go out, seal it, sweep it with a stone, and we sweep it back up afterwards, and it provides a sealant and a texture. The other is the two are full plant mixes, and these are terminologies you'll see later on, but we mill less than 2 inches, or between 2 and 4, depending on how bad it is, and then overlay, and the last one is, on occasion we end up, if it's really bad, have to do full depth, what's called full depth reclamation, where we literally excavate up all the pavement and start from scratch. So what we provide online, 2 different maps. One is the pavement condition map, and you saw earlier I was going through the rating systems and how it's rated from excellent to very poor. This is a screenshot, not an active map, but a screenshot of the Reston area last year, actually 2 to 3 years ago. And so the roads you see in red are very poor. The ones you see in pink are poor, and move up the line to yellow, green, and blue, blue being excellent. And you can go on this map yourself and look at it at virginiaroads.org and find just clue in the key in pavement condition map. And it's interactive. You can go scroll into closer or back out and look farther. The other thing I'll point out is in the far left, that's the town of Herndon. You won't see any ratings on the cities and towns, and also on the private properties that there are roadways there, but in many cases there are condos or commercial properties that have roadway networks within them that are privately maintained. So the last one I'll show you here is called our pavement status map. So our pavement status map for last year this is a screenshot of that. And so this is what you'll eventually get to see here, not until April, unfortunately, but you'll be able to pull this up for this coming year. And this is a screenshot from last year. And you can click on a road, and in the center of the screen, like in the screenshot, a palette will come up and it'll give you the VDOT pavement project manager's name, phone number, and email address. And if you have a question about your road being paved, when it's going to start, or something that's going on during the process, you can email that project manager directly, and he should be able to give you a response. So unfortunately, one of the things we can't do is provide the final pavement of what roads are getting paved this year. We've had a little bit of a delay. It's not going to be published online until early to mid-April. Right now, we still just have a preliminary plan statewide, and in part that is budget driven, and with a rough February and maybe January too, with several ice and snowstorm events that we've had. I'm sure they're still working on gathering all the costs for those storms and weighing them against the funds available in maintenance to actually execute the planned 2021 plan that's available. And this is pretty typical of what happens each year. Is there's have to map it out like that and work our way through it. This year, there's a little bit more of a delay. We'll have this in the first or second week. You'll be able to go online and look that up. So lastly, I'll just transition over. One of the things we do, as Chris mentioned, though, is when we mill up the roadways and excavate them to get ready to replace them, of course, all the pavement markings are coming up along with it. And typically we do replace in kind. And then, like in the second bullet, in some cases, we make some adjustments, add some lines to make it a little bit better, but it's basically replace in kind. And the last bullet you see on the screen here is we do work with Fairfax County DOT early in the season, trying to help to identify and work together on which roads the county may be interested in converting, perhaps, or adding bike lanes to, and other pedestrian improvements such as new crosswalks. And we try to work the economies of scale so that we're doing that together. We're bringing up the road and milling it, and then when we're putting it back, we're trying to have an engineered layout for reworking the pavement markings. So that's just a transition over into Chris's presentation, but if you have any questions anytime, you can call 1-800-4ROAD by the number there, and more easily you can go on my.vdot.virginia.gov. And again, both the pavement condition map and the paving map, the 2021, will be out in early to mid-April, but that'll be coming up soon. So with that, thank you very much, and I can answer questions later, and stay safe. Thank you. Okay, Chris, I'm stopped my presentation. You've got it.
Thank you. Video on, mute on, off, and Lauren, if you could make me the presenter again so that I can put up my presentation. There we go. So again, and I probably should have mentioned this at the beginning, also with me tonight is my coworker, Lauren Del Mar. She's actually running the presentation. She'll monitor the Q&A and help us with those Q&As at the end. And also Supervisor Walkinshaw's staff, Sally Kadalov is here with us as well. So thank you all for being involved. So again, I'll go ahead and move through. Our role is to analyze the roads that are being paved and see if there's any opportunities for proposed striping modifications. And that's mainly if the road is excessively wide. What we're basically looking for is the opportunity, again, for the bike lanes or parallel parking striping, things that visually narrow the roadway and help with the speeding and driver behavior, because when a road is wide, a driver doesn't have to pay as much attention, has a feeling of being able to drive faster. So we're looking to improve the community by doing these striping. It begins with the idea of also expanding the bicycle network. Our county does have a bicycle master plan and certainly has lots of traffic. So anything we can do to get people to use bicycle trips will help reduce traffic. Also, we're shifting, of course, our focus, and I'll explain a little bit more of that later, where for many years we were just focusing on bicycle commuters, but it's a large county and it's hard to commute long distances by bike. But what we do know is that there's plenty of local trips that people can take by bike on a comfortable residential street, such as to shopping, to your places of worship, to schools, and to parks. We do want to deliver as safe and as comfortable facility as we can, because not all people feel comfortable riding on road, especially high-speed, high-volume roads. But this paving process is really a win-win for all of us, because it's very cost-effective, and that's what we're showing in those bottom bullets there. Our regular approach to trying to deliver pedestrian and bicycle facilities is building trails and sidewalks, and that's the Board of Supervisors has been able to allocate $536 million over 20 plus fiscal years to do that. But unfortunately, that's not enough to cover all the demands. We have a 275-year-old county that's 400 square miles. And of course, the modern places were built with sidewalks and trails, but we still have a lot of older neighborhoods that were built in the 40s and 50s and 60s without sidewalks. And certainly many of our arterials and other roads are colonial roads there. You know, some of them are literally 200 years old. And so we have a lot of challenges of building trails and sidewalks. First and foremost, there's not enough funding, but also it's all what we call retrofit construction, and that's it's very hard to squeeze in a sidewalk or a trail when you're dealing with a built environment. So the bottom line is that it's expensive, and it's essentially similar to widening the roadway, because a sidewalk or a trail with the amount of space that's required is essentially the same width as adding a lane to a roadway. So it's very expensive. This process that we're talking about tonight with VDOT is incredibly cost effective. As I said, the road's going to be paved. VDOT has to put striping back down. And if we add a little bit of striping, change the striping a little bit, yes, there's a cost, tens of thousands of dollars, but certainly not the multi-million dollars that it costs us to build new facilities. So I've always described this as a good news VDOT story, because VDOT gets picked on for why wasn't my snow cleared and things like that, but this is really a positive where VDOT has stepped up and joined the county in doing the right public policy thing, and they deserve credit for bearing the costs that's associated with that. So I mentioned earlier about bicyclists. For 40 years in America, the focus has been on the on-road cyclists and traditional bike lanes. And that was actually a failed approach. Whereas in other parts of the world, they focused on off-road bike facilities because those were more comfortable for people to use, people of all ages and all abilities. The average, certainly a family with children is not going to be riding on a 45-mile-an-hour road with 40,000 vehicles a day with cars going right next to them. The breakdown you see in front of you here shows that 53% of society is interested in riding a bicycle, but concerned about their safety and comfort. There's another group that is fairly enthusiastic. I'm sort of like myself, more like the weekend warrior, but I certainly do not feel comfortable riding on a high-speed, high-volume road. And then, of course, there's a part of society that has no interest in riding a bike. But where we're going in the county is to try and move to more off-road facilities, just for this reason. But we really do view the summer repaving process as a great opportunity to get facilities on residential streets or interim facilities where, again, otherwise it would cost us a lot of money to try and build a trail. So the types of facilities we're talking about are shown in this graphic. I'll start actually from the right. The better, more comfortable facility is a buffered bike lane, and that's where we have enough width to stripe a bike lane, but then also have a buffered space between the bicyclist and the vehicles. Standard bike lane, the middle picture, that's where we just have the standard bike lane, which is typically a 5-foot bike lane. And then the leftmost picture, a sharrow or a shared lane marking, that's where, say, the road narrows and there's not enough room for a bike lane, but we have a bike lane before and after. And so we want to indicate to the drivers that they should expect bicyclists in the lane. And then we can also place that sharrow where we recommend to the bicyclists that they should be. Is there enough room that they can stay to the right, or is the lane narrow enough that they need to be centered in the lane? Excuse me. So I mentioned the benefits of bicycling, and this infographic talks to that. The obvious one, the top left, is the bike lanes increase the comfort for cyclists. But in the middle top graphic, you see that when we introduce bike lanes, the exposure risk for pedestrians using a crosswalk or just crossing the street, period, is lessened because the cars are now moved into the center of the road. And so there's that area where the bike lanes are not an area where a pedestrian's threatened. The top right graphic shows the benefit if you're just walking along the street next to a bike lane, that now we've created a 5-7 foot buffer between you on the sidewalk and, in addition to the grass buffer, and the vehicles that are going past you. So that makes it more comfortable to walk. On the lower left, the graphic is making the point that as vehicle speeds slow, the noise levels and, of course, the speeding through neighborhoods is reduced. I don't want to overstate the speed reduction. The classic engineering metric on that is what we call the 85th percentile. Our before and after data on these bike restripings show only a 1 mile an hour or so reduction in that 85th percentile. But what it does show is the excessive speeding is virtually eliminated, whereas we have when the lanes are wide open and we have vehicles speeding 15 or 20 miles an hour over the speed limit, our after data has showed that in most cases, those excessive speeders are eliminated. And then last but not least, if your driveway, your house fronts one of these roads with bike lanes, it actually improves your ability to see pulling out in and out of your driveway, because the sight distance triangle is improved, because again, the vehicles are moved into the middle of the roadway, and therefore your ability to see around parked cars is improved with that shifting of the vehicles, again, 5 or 7 feet more into the middle of the road. So here's an example of what it looks like. This is Annandale Road, and the before picture shows Annandale Road with like 15 feet wide lanes and parallel parking. And that just again leads drivers to not be as attentive and to therefore end up driving overly fast. Whereas the after picture shows the typical treatment even on a 2-lane road, where we're able to introduce the bike lanes, properly mark the parking lanes, treat the intersections. So on the left of that, you see the hatching where you have the radius coming out of a side street, and to the right, you see what we call puppy tracks, which indicates you're supposed to merge into that area to make your right turn. And again, the impact on driver behavior and speeding is actually very positive. So for tonight in the Braddock district, again, we look at the draft list of roads that are being paved. We look at what roads may be out there that are wide and could benefit from these restriping proposals. And so we have 2 roads in the Braddock district this year, Commonwealth Boulevard and Government Center Parkway. I should point out also that this has been going on for years. So for instance, in Braddock, I'm sure you've noticed the striping on Sideburn, or out at Government Center Park, the Government Center Park, Sideburn next to Commonwealth, that is, and out of the Government Center Parkway area on Post Forest Drive and Ridgetop Drive. So as each of these paving seasons go by and a road's paved, we actually are successfully building a network for the bicyclists, as well as providing these traffic benefits. So Commonwealth Boulevard, this is the existing slide. Commonwealth between Guinea Road and Sideburn is essentially 2 travel lanes with on-street parking in both directions, has sidewalks on both sides, and is striped for an eastbound left turn lane into Laurel Ridge Elementary School with no bicycling facilities. The proposal would be to add a bike lane in the eastbound direction by narrowing that travel lane, maintaining the legal parking, but there's not enough room for 2 bike lanes. So we would use the Sharrow markings in the opposite direction. Moving on to Government Center Parkway. Government Center Parkway is a 4-lane divided roadway, but it's which was our typical way of building roads as development occurred in the 70s and 80s. But you really don't need a 4-lane roadway until the daily traffic is, well, technically you don't need a 4-lane roadway until the daily traffic is 20,000 vehicles a day. For our purposes in our county, we give ourselves a little more of a buffer, so that if a road is 15,000 or 12,000 vehicles a day or less, we consider it a good candidate for a road diet. Here on Government Center Parkway, there's only 5,500 vehicles a day, so it's way below that threshold. The road is over-designed, therefore, and again, a 4-lane road, even more so than a wide 2-lane road, lends cars to speed, allows aggressive drivers to pass, and so it can be not what a community is looking for. So there are sidewalks on both sides, except for a small gap between Ridgetop and Waples Mill, and there's no bicycle facilities. So what we propose to do on a road like that is to really convert that rightmost lane into a buffered bike lane, so that essentially Government Center Parkway would become a 2-lane road with a buffered bike lane. And that gives us a safe bicycling facility, but again, brings the road into a better character for the uses around it. Government Center Parkway is, as the name implies, where the Fairfax County Government Center is. So along a portion of it, it is the large government center, which today has a parking lot, but the county is looking at building workforce residential housing, converting some of that to residential, and the rest of it is actually very residential with a higher density multifamily dwelling units. So there's certainly a lot of people that walk and bike and get around that area. The other thing I mentioned earlier is pedestrian safety. So again, as our collaboration with VDOT has improved over the years, we've been able to focus on what are the pedestrian safety opportunities that go along with this restriping. So we, as staff, we review the existing crosswalks that are out there. We typically propose to upgrade them from the parallel striping to what you see here, which is the high visibility block pattern. But then also, excuse me, we can, if in priority situations, do something like you see here, which is add a median refuge, a concrete island. But a big purpose of us having this meeting tonight is to get your input as the communities that live around these roads. As professionals, we can look at them and come up with our observations, and we look at things like pedestrian generators such as schools and parks and pools and stuff like that. But we would very much welcome your feedback if there's a location that you've thought for a long time could benefit from a crosswalk. I should say we can't promise that we'll be able to do a crosswalk. We still do have to meet engineering standards. You don't want to overuse crosswalks because then they can lose their effectiveness for drivers. And they definitely need to be engineered correctly. We also don't want them to give a pedestrian a false sense of security. So there's a little bit of a trade-off in a residential situation where, you would think drivers would expect in Kings Park West, for example, to know that there's people walking around and to be alert for pedestrians. So we can't put them everywhere. But again, if you have locations on either Commonwealth or Government Center Parkway or any other roads when the full paving list is published, please do let us know, and we will conduct the engineering study that goes with that to see if we can add a crosswalk as part of this process. So with that, I'll bring us to the feedback slide. And by the way, this presentation will be posted on our webpage within the next few days after tonight. So you don't have to write this down, but you can take a picture if you want. You can contact us, and there's more information on the next page as well. You can contact VDOT. The best way to contact them on paving issues is through their my.vdot.virginia.gov portal on the internet, or with their phone number 1-800-4ROAD. And then for us, when this presentation is up, you can click on that link that says electronically, but the information on this slide shows you how best to contact us as well. That's the website there. Each year we stand up a website for these paving processes, and that's the address for the Braddock portion of it. You can email us at activefairfax@fairfaxcounty.gov. You can mail us at our office building in Fairfax, and we certainly, again, welcome your input. So with that, I'll close by thanking everybody for being involved. We know your time is valuable, and we really do appreciate you taking the time to join us tonight and be involved. We will again ask you, if you're on your computer, to post questions in the Q&A feature. You open the Q&A window and type in your question. And if you've called in via your phone tonight, you can press *3 to raise your hand and to be added to the queue verbally. So with that, I will let Lauren read us the Q&A questions. And
sure. Thank you, Chris.
That's the last slide. Thank you.
So we have a few questions for you, Chris, regarding crosswalks. I'm going to start reading those. The first is from Sarah Lennon, and it says, would this process allow for additional features to improve crossings like lights or flashing pedestrian light/sign?
That's a great question. Unfortunately, not immediately. So again, what we're doing is a very dynamic process. These roads are literally going to be paved here in the next couple of months. So the reason we have these meetings at this time of year is we have to VDOT has to work hard with their consultants to modify these striping plans and get them to the crews to get them paved and get them striped this summer. The county does not have dedicated funding or a program to install what are called rectangular rapid flash beacons. You've probably seen those nearest to here on Prosperity at the Cross County Trail. We've been able to do those in the county with some special VDOT safety funding that was made available, and VDOT partnered with us to identify the locations. We've also been able to do them as part of a couple larger projects. So those are still considered not really experimental, but interim approval with the Federal Highways Department. So VDOT does not install them without our involvement, and we actually currently maintain them with our agreement with VDOT. So that being said, we do want to have your input. So what we, as I alluded to earlier, there's not enough funding to go around, but we do maintain a list of requests. And so if you would like to send us your request for where a location you would like to see rectangular rapid flash beacons, we can add that to the unfunded request list. They're not millions of dollars, but they're also not cheap. A simple pair of rapid flash beacons with the concrete work that we typically have to do with them, that unfortunately runs about $100,000. And if it's a median situation where we need 3 of them with 2 in the median, it gets up $150,000. So unfortunately, we those are new. All of our transportation funding is encumbered with projects that the board has previously approved, and at such time as future funding becomes available, though, we will work with each board office on what the funding priorities in their district are. And so please do submit your request for location or locations that you think a crosswalk would benefit from those flashing warning devices.
Thank you. The next question is, would crosswalks prevent a traffic study to determine the need for stop signs or other remediations other than narrowing the lanes?
Can you repeat that?
Would crosswalks prevent a traffic study to determine the need for stop signs or other remediations other than narrowing the lanes?
No, I mean, I think if I'm understanding the question correctly, a crosswalk doesn't negate the other things that we might look at to solve a problem. It's almost the opposite. For instance, if there are stop signs already, or if stop signs are warranted to be added, then the feeling is that the cars are stopped, and in a residential setting, at least, it ought to be easier for pedestrians to cross when cars are stopped for a stop sign. So no, when we work with VDOT on all of these things, none of these are mutually exclusive, and they can be used in combination or not, depending on what the case. We do look at everything case by case as to what exactly best fits the need and whatever constraints we might have.
Thank you. The next question is, how would you potentially address the hills and lack of visibility at major intersections?
So if that question is about crosswalks, we absolutely do have to have adequate sight distance for a crosswalk. The two things that are very serious to traffic engineering about certainly approving new crosswalks is that there's adequate sight distance and that they are ADA, that they meet the American with Disabilities Act. So we need to add the proper curb ramps or things like that to make them ADA. So when we propose new crosswalks, our relationship with VDOT is that, for instance, if there are no curb ramps, and we think it is a good location for crosswalks, that the striping would go down as part of the paving process, and that the county but actually fund the curb ramps. We do have to make sure that sight distance is adequate, and again, because we're telling the pedestrians that that's where we want you to cross, and so we certainly want the drivers to be able to see. As far as the road itself and the bike lanes and everything else, of course, the built environment is not something that we're changing during the paving process. So the Commonwealth, for instance, is, hilly, not super curvy, but, there are places where, because of parked vehicles in the hills, that you don't have as much sight distance as you do on the flatter areas that are more wide open. So we certainly do look at that for the crosswalks, but as far as the bike lanes themselves are concerned, there's not much we can do about that, the built environment.
Thanks, Chris. The next question is, how many, and again, this is for you, how many residential parking spaces would this take away?
So I'm sorry, I should have made that clear in the presentation. We almost never propose taking away parking spaces because we know how valuable those are. In a single family neighborhood, such as Kings Park West, those spaces are often the overflow spaces. Sometimes people have multiple vehicles and they park their vehicles there. In multifamily neighborhoods, apartments and townhouses, we know that parking is all the more critical because there's typically parking shortages. So parking is something we hardly ever propose taking away. We did have a presentation last night in the Providence district where we have a single family residential street with grass ditch section shoulders that we don't really believe a lot of people park along there. And if we add the bike lane there, that you shouldn't be parking in the bike lane. So there are cases where we do propose that, but we're not proposing to take away any of the what we call the legal parking spaces in these proposals. But what does happen is these do need to be engineered. So for instance, you're not supposed to park at 50 feet around a bus stop. You're not supposed to park, I think it's 25 feet in advance of a stop sign. You're not supposed to park and block a crosswalk. So when we put the parallel parking striping in, we do engineer those with respect to those type of constraints. So it's probable that there would be a few spaces that would be striped away in the entire length of Commonwealth, but we are purposely maintaining the entire length of both sides of Commonwealth's parallel parking. So it really should be an insignificant loss, unless your house is, right at one of those stop signs or bus stops or crosswalks.
Thanks, Chris. We have a few requests for median refuges, and we will document those. So I'm not going to go through those locations right now. I just will document them and let you know that we've already seen quite a few of them as requests in the past. I don't know, Chris, if you want to talk a little bit more about how we determine and what our funding situation is like for median refuges.
Sure. We don't have a large dedicated amount of funding for median refuges. So in a typical paving year throughout the entire county, we're looking at a handful of concrete projects that we do to work with these crosswalks. So please do let us know where you think is a good location. And Lauren is actually the pedestrian program manager for the county, so she is the one that actually studies and keep tracks of those. But we again don't have a dedicated pot of funding. We basically just try and use some of our Department of Transportation funding that we can tap into. A couple of curb ramps to facilitate a crosswalk. That's only $10,000–$20,000. Median refuges can get a little bit more. They can we have to look at the drainage and everything that's around there. So there's some engineering that needs to go into those. Those can be $50,000 or $75,000. So again, we certainly welcome your suggestions, because even if we cannot achieve it through the paving process due to our budget, we will keep track of those for when future funding becomes available, and then we can consider them for broader transportation funding. So I can't overpromise. In fact, I can't promise them at all, but we do study them, and if we collectively with VDOT determined that a handful of locations throughout the county are would really be in need and really benefit and really give us the benefit cost from that, then we do try and do a few of those each summer.
Thanks, Chris. There's actually two questions here, but they're related to the same topic, so I'm going to say both of them. From Eric, road diet for Monument Drive from West Docks Road to 286. And then the second one says, recent deaths on Monument Drive on both sides for Fair Ridge Drive. Per Peyton Onks, given us the green light to share that Monument is on the draft repaving list for this year, and along with the Fairfax DOT is recommending the road diet be implemented.
Yes, that is very good news. So that's the Springfield Magisterial District. That's not part of our presentation tonight, but Monument Drive is on the draft repaving list between the Fairfax County Parkway and West Docks. That is similar to the proposal you saw tonight for Government Center Parkway. It's a 4-lane divided. It has slightly more traffic, like 7,000 ADT or 9,000 ADT, but again, well under the threshold that's needed for a 4-lane roadway. We have had a long-standing community request and frustration with the speed of traffic there, and some improvements have been made over the years to the intersection of Fair Ridge Drive. But as was stated, we've had a pedestrian fatality and a vehicle fatality on that road in the past year or two. So we're actually very excited to be able to propose a road diet on that section. And as long as the paving still includes that section this year, that would be part of our proposal this year. And it would be exactly like you saw for the Government Center Parkway proposal, that we would convert the rightmost lane to a buffered bike lane. And then I didn't mention it on Government Center Parkway. When we approach the traffic signals, though, then we do leave the capacity at the traffic signals. So we would end up dropping that bike lane at the traffic signals. So you still have the 2 through lanes at the traffic signals. But yes, that's a very positive development. Thanks, Chris. Eric, you also have your hand raised. And so I just want to, please send me in the chat if you still have additional questions, or in the Q&A. There's no chat, the chat's disabled. Okay, great, no more questions. Okay, so I'm going to go to the next question is, in this process, do you ever consider traffic circles? Sorry. Did you catch that, Chris? Sorry. No, I can take it again, but I was thinking maybe Steve would take one. I'm just joking. That's a great question. Again, the basic premise here is we're just paving. The road's just being paved. We've never done a traffic circle associated with repaving. The only reason I'm hesitating is, would it be possible if we found the right road situation where we could do that? It would be similar to the concrete medians that we're talking about. So, I think in the realm of possibilities, it would be possible. But the challenge that we have found with roundabouts is they take more room than you think. So for instance, if we were converting a 4-lane road, such as Government Center Parkway or Monument, could we fit, in turning it into a 2-lane road, 1 lane in each direction, could we fit a 1-lane roundabout in the middle of today's 4-lane divided median breaks? Maybe, but typically when you need the room for a roundabout at an intersection, it's actually larger than the intersection that's there today. And then that would require not only the engineering, but right-of-way acquisition and things like that that would not be part of paving. Steve, would you like to add anything to that?
You hit it right on. Typically a footprint of a roundabout is larger, so like Chris said, it would require engineering, and many times it's can't fit within the existing footprint, and that ends up becoming a project of itself outside of our paving program and our repaving program. But that's a great question, a great idea. There might be occasion where that could happen, like Chris said, if we're going from 4 to 2 lanes, extra pavements there. Sometimes it really depends on where the 2 intersection roads meet and how large they are, because the turning radius around a traffic circle has to be large enough for school buses typically, as well as other types of vehicles. So thanks.
And the other challenge with roundabouts is they really should have what we call balanced flow. So both all 4 approaches of a roundabout, both roadways need to have decent amount of traffic, and typically most of our situations involve one main road with a lot of traffic and then side streets with much lower traffic, and that doesn't work as well in a roundabout, because the street that has the most traffic tends to dominate the roundabout, and the side street doesn't have as much opportunities to enter the roundabout. So, but that again, that's nothing that's I don't think anyone's proposed in previous paving cycles, and given the right circumstances, it is something that we could certainly look at.
Thank you. So I am not seeing any additional questions or raised hands. If anybody has any additional questions, now is the time.
Okay, so if there are none, again,
Sorry, I do have someone who said they asked a question, but I don't see the question. Would you mind asking it again, Bradley? Okay, my question is in regard to repaving projects. Past projects like Braddock Road west of 495 have yet to be cleaned up. With new projects on the horizon, how can we hold VDOT to account to make sure they don't leave now debris everywhere they do work?
Obviously,
everywhere they do
for
work.
me. Yep.
Yes, thanks, Steve.
Yeah. Obviously, we were very concerned about that. I don't know what location exactly was stated, but any of the location that you see something that's not in place, we will take care of it. We have multiple contractors that work through the season doing the repaving and the slurry seal projects. And the slurry seal projects sometimes are not as well liked, but they do work to help extend the life of the pavement. And it is a process that takes a little longer because they're putting down a sealant first. Well, first they're sweeping the road. They're putting down a sealant and eradicating the original lines that were there. Then they're coming back and putting down a tiny chip, a rock that gets spread and swept across the pavement where it sticks to that sealant. And then they come back and sweep again and then again. And sometimes there are little mounds and areas where the tiny stone has gone into the gutter pans or in the corners and the wheel tracks. And we do get complaints and calls back about that, and we'll have our maintenance division go out and clean that up. Or in other cases, sometimes we've had some projects where we've had some issues with the underlying pavement that we didn't know were there, such as a crack in it that's has water coming through it, and we've paved it, but we didn't know what was underneath necessarily. And so we have to go back and do a patch. And then there are other occasions where we did our project, but when a utility came in afterwards and ended up having to fix something, and they have to cut out the pavement and replace a pipe or something that's broken, and then put a temporary patch down, and then they come back later and compact it when traffic isn't busy, where they can move around it and do the final repaving in that patch spot. And sometimes those don't always work out that great, and we have to ask them to do it over again. So if you have any questions like that, certainly we will address them. Just you can contact us on the website that we provided. Thank you.
Steve, would it be, is the website that we have on the screen right now where that contact would take place, or should we go back to your splash screen for that?
So my.v. There you go.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Chris.
Yep.
So that link there, my.v.virginia.gov is the best place to reach out, Bradley. Thanks.
Yeah. Yep.
So that's all the questions that I have. And with no additional hands raised, I'll send it back to Chris to wrap us up.
Sure. Thanks, Lauren. Thanks, everybody. So again, I really do want to thank everybody's participation. This is what I do for a living, but out of 1.2 million people, we really appreciate folks taking their time to help improve the community and give us feedback. And we do want your input. So if you don't like it, please let us know. If you do like it, you can let us know too. What we're really hoping for is to improve upon something that we may not know. So if you see that we may have missed something, or that we need to tweak something, you have some local knowledge that can benefit us, we really would appreciate it if you contact us and let us know. So
Chris, I have one more question.
Oh, sure.
Who has responsibility for the sidewalk on Roberts Road over Rabbit Branch?
I can try and look it up. Unfortunately, is Rabbit Branch between Commonwealth and what is that? Just south of Commonwealth. I'm drawing a blank on the name there. Right by Robinson.
What
I can look it up as well because
yeah, Lauren.
Yes, she says yes. That's the location.
Yeah. So unfortunately, sidewalks and trails change in this county, block by block, street by street. They're half VDOTs, half Fairfax counties. We have a GIS layer that tells us whose is whose. And unfortunately, maintenance budgets are stretched thin. So most maintenance is done on a request basis. So if by chance Lauren is able to find that while we're talking here, we can tell you, but we can certainly get back to you if we have your email tonight. And what we do is we pass it on to either VDOT's maintenance as a request, or to the county's Department of Public Works as a request.
So the other information we can give you is that we have online available a walkway maintenance map, where you can actually look up anywhere in the county who's responsible. We can also look that up for you, as Chris mentioned, but if you wanted to look yourself at other locations, I think a quick Google search will find that, but I'm trying to search through it now, but it's taking me a moment.
Yeah, I'm pulling it up too. I have to scroll over. I'm at George Mason. I'm at Robinson. Let's see if it loads. Okay, I found it. It's labeled as VDOT. Steve, you're the lucky winner. So I assume that there's a maintenance concern for that section.
Yeah, if you could follow up after this meeting, you can contact us through the portal and let us know, and you can tell us the exact location. As Chris mentioned, some of the sidewalks are maintained by the county, some of them are maintained by us, and we too have a same budget constriction. But when we see areas that have problems, we try to deal with it. If it's something that's a higher priority over another because it's really bad, then we have to make that call as far as trying to queue them up as far as addressing sidewalks and other types of concrete. I mean, sometimes it's driveway aprons, sometimes it's a handicap ramp that is coming apart and freeze thaws affecting it or something like that. And again, it could be ours, could be county maintained, and in some cases it even could be privately maintained. Depends on where it is. But
yeah, and so Steve, I can send you where that is. And the weird thing is, depending on where the concern is, it actually shows like the first 100 feet or so from Commonwealth as a natural surface trail, which is actually incorrect. But the rest of it shows as a VDOT maintained.
okay.
So, Lauren, if there's no other questions, we'll go ahead and wrap. Again, thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for your participation. Again, the contact information was up earlier, but this will be, you can look on our webpage. If you just go to the Fairfax County government webpage and search paving, you can find, make sure you find the 2021 paving, because we probably also have the previous year's pages up. Supervisor Waukesha, I see you came back on. Would you like to say some closing remarks?
I just wanted to thank you, Chris, and Steve, and the entire team for the great presentations, and the residents who joined for some good questions. Thank you all.
Great, thank you. So with that, we'll say good night, everybody, and thanks again for your interest in your community.